Jesus and his disciples left from there and began a journey through Galilee, but he did not wish anyone to know about it. He was teaching his disciples and telling them, "The Son of Man is to be handed over to men, and they will kill him, and 3 days after his death, the Son of Man will rise." But they did not understand the saying, and they were afraid to question him. They came to Capernaum, and once inside the house, he began to ask them, "What were you arguing about on the way?" But they remained silent. They had been discussing among themselves on the way who was the greatest. Then he sat down, called the 12, and said to them, "If anyone wishes to be first, he shall be the last of all and the servant of all." Taking a child, he placed it in their midst, and putting his arms around it, he said to them, "Whoever receives one child such as this in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives not me, but the one who sent me." Thus far, the Gospel of Mark. This passage often makes me laugh because if we're honest, it's so easy to see ourselves in it. It's just so funny that he would be explaining this most profound and emotionally wrenching truth to them. Do you realize that I'm going to be killed this way? And they, as much as to say, yeah, that's too bad. Listen, about my place at your right hand. It's almost like that. And we can do that.
The irony.
Yeah, we can just be so dense and so blind to the way that we sometimes act. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he explains this teaching to them. Now, there's a couple of ways we might think about their fear to question him. One is there could be a natural fear that they're going to be embarrassed, the fear of the student who's afraid to ask a stupid question. But the other one is the fear that they won't like what he says. Mm-hmm. If this is what's going to happen to him, what's going to happen to them? They would already be able to reason past, oh, wait a minute, what's going to happen to us? So it may have been that. We certainly can sometimes do that as well. We want things to go the way we want them to go, and we don't want to entertain the possibility that God sees something different than what we see. And what God sees may entail some suffering that leads to something that God wants for us. And we don't want to deal with the suffering. I'm continuing reading the book that I've been reading. It's titled "Dying We Live," and it's the last letters and written testimonies of victims of the Nazi purges in Germany. Mm. And most of them are pastors, Protestant pastors and some Catholic priests. Some are just ordinary men and women working. Some of them are children writing back to their parents. And often these letters are right up to the hour or so before they're killed. And it's just so powerful. And so many of them have this sort of surprised sense. They're just ordinary people. They did not expect that they would be called on to do something heroic, like be a martyr. And so they're just so surprised that this is happening, and yet they realize God is working in this. These people are going to kill me in a few days, and I'm writing this letter back to my wife and children to explain to them why we must go through this. And they're getting it, that God is going to use this somehow. as far as they knew at that time, the Nazis were going to win.
Right.
The whole world was going to be overtaken by this Nazism, this ideology. So it wasn't because they knew that we're going to bring about the end of Nazism, but just that they knew that God was going to use this somehow. So it's just really powerful. But we see some of that here. They had the opportunity, the disciples, to do that, but they weren't ready. They weren't ready for that yet. So then he's casting about, Jesus, how can I help them to understand what their life is going to be for when I'm gone? And here's the way: to take a little child who in that time and place would have been considered not useless, but very unimportant, out of sight, out of mind, but to put him front and center. Whoever receives one such as this receives me. So you have to bow yourself and place yourself even below this child.
Yeah, because I think the image of the child, once again, this is the image of the most helpless and weak. I mean, it probably is a better image, but if I was to come up with the most helpless and weakest person or being who has the most value, it would be that of a small child. I'm assuming he's taking a baby, because it says taking a child and placing it in their midst. Well, I don't know that you can take, to
me, this sounds like a toddler.
Oh, really?
But
okay.
Just because he places his arms around it.
Yeah.
But certainly I would agree with you that when one sees a little baby, you're looking at, helplessness.
Completely helpless.
Defined, yeah.
And just, flipping and flopping and, so reliant. This line that kind of stuck with me when you read through this was, if anyone wishes to be first, he shall be the last of all and the servant of all.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they go directly from, sort of this discussing, who was going to be the greatest, it's like he goes into this reflection of, this is the whole deal, is this sort of message of humility, of servant leadership, of, and then serving the weakest among them all.